Welcome to this week's REI Weekly Deal Breakdown. Today, I'm going to talk about a wholesale deal that went down in Kingston, New York a couple weeks ago. So if you do get value from this video, do me a favor, subscribe to my YouTube channel, like the video, and if you're listening to this on Spotify or Apple, do me a favor, share the show with someone else, post it on social media. It would really mean a lot to me. That's how we keep growing the show. And if you're not familiar with me, my name's Greg Helbeck. Been a full-time entrepreneur now for almost 10 years. I've done over 250 properties now. Got a lot of experience buying and selling real estate all across the United States. All the information you're going to hear is from the trenches, so you can hopefully benefit from it and use it to grow your business. So today's topic is a deal that I did in Kingston, New York. The way that we found the lead was interesting. It was from a pay-per-lead service. So we use this company called PropertyLeads.com, and we use them on and off now. So we placed a bid. It was in Ulster County, New York, and we were the top bid. And this lead came in, and long story short, they lived in Florida, the seller, and they had a property up in Kingston. It was vacant, and there was an extra lot next to it. It's basically a knockdown building, terrible shape, and then there was an empty lot next to it. 2 addresses, I believe. And they wanted to sell it. They knew it needed a ton of work. It was in a pretty good area, but it wasn't in like Beverly Hills. So they were pretty realistic about the price. And I remember when Brett was talking to the seller, I was like, I don't know about this deal. It's a knockdown. Like, there's not a ton of new construction over here. You know, we need to get this thing really, really cheap. It was only going to be a wholesale. So we got it under contract and I put it out to my buyers list, and I ended up getting someone to pay me 30 grand more than what I had promised the seller. And I was blown away. Could not believe it. I was like, wow, there's no way. So I had multiple people who wanted it and ended up finding the buyer through my email list, which is really good. By the way, if you're in the Hudson Valley and you need help selling a property, send me an email. Anything that's a deal will sell on my list. So anyway, found the buyer. And I believe we did a double close here. So we ended up doing a separate contract with a buyer, and the deal ended up having a little bit of a title snafu with the deed. It was an inherited property and the seller was down in Florida. So it took a little bit longer than normal to close it because there was a title issue, but it ended up working out and made $30,000 on this deal. And I did not think it was even a deal. So what are some lessons that you can learn from this experience to applying your own business? Number one, there are going to be properties that you might not think are deals that end up turning into deals, right? So a lot of investors have like their strict criteria on like what they do. And I think that's a pretty good general strategy. But if you just buy certain things, you're going to leave some money on the table because there's going to be other properties that you might not want to buy that someone else that you know through a buyer's list might be willing and able to buy. So in this case, because the seller had a vacant property that needed work, and he wanted to sell at a cheap price and he was motivated, we were like, hey, let's give this thing a shot. We told the seller, which is lesson number 2, be transparent. We told the seller, hey, listen, I've mentioned this many times on my videos. We're not going to be the buyer. We're going to find someone to buy this from us. And if we find someone to buy this from us, we'll buy this from you. Essentially wholesale, right? And we told the seller that, and he was totally fine with it. He's like, yeah, I know you guys got to make money. It needs a lot of work. So he let us literally get it under contract contingent upon us finding another buyer to sell it to after we bought it from him. And we rolled the dice and ended up making out on this one, making 30 grand to it. And the lesson is sometimes you roll the dice on properties. Now, this is not going to work on every property. I would say on 10 dice rolls we do as a company, we probably make money on half of them, right? So 10 properties, we don't think we can really do it. If we try to do the deal at the right number, about half of the time it ends up working out, and we turn literally those 10 deals we wouldn't buy ourselves to rehab into money because someone else wants to buy them. So don't be afraid to roll the dice. But if you're going to do this, the key here is you got to tell the seller the truth. If you're not going to be the guy who's going to ultimately buy the house, you got to tell the seller that, because you don't want to tell the seller that and then you can't find a buyer and then you call the seller back and you're like, hey, I'm bailing. I don't want to do it anymore. And you just waste their time. You'd be surprised when you tell sellers the truth on how receptive they are to working with you. So that's the second lesson. Third lesson here, at least in my area, this is in the Hudson Valley. If you can get something at a certain price, doesn't really matter the condition, it'll probably sell. So for example, like Kingston, New York, anywhere in the Hudson Valley, and this could be anywhere in Seattle, this is like any high-end area like New York, Seattle, San Diego. If you can get properties at certain numbers, it's almost a guarantee they're going to sell just because there's nothing else for sale at prices that cheap, in our case, $70,000. So, you know, if you see something cheap and you're in a high-end market like where I am, definitely go after that property, right? Go after the property, have a contingency, be transparent with the seller, but you'll be surprised if you're in a high value area on what stuff sells for just because there's so much demand and there's not that much supply. And then the last lesson I'll give you on this deal is this property. We had a local competitor, good friend of mine. He had the property. He couldn't sell it. Like he had this thing on an option agreement before us, couldn't sell it. we turn around, I think we offered the guy more money and we ultimately sold it for $30,000. So the lesson there is have a good buyer's list. My buyer's list most likely is better than my friend/competitors, because if he had the same list as me, he most likely would have sold it. So don't underestimate the power of having a good investor list, because the difference between me making 30 grand and my competitor making zero was literally my buyer's list. That's it, right? It was one person on that list who decided that property was worth 100,000. They paid me that and it ended up working out. So hopefully you got value from this video and these lessons and from this deal. If you did, do me a favor and subscribe to my YouTube channel, like the video, share the show if you're listening to it on audio. And if you're in the Hudson Valley, shameless plug, you have a house, the Hudson Valley, Reno, San Diego, Seattle, or Delaware, if you're in any of those areas, you have a property you want to either wholesale to me, or if you want to just wholesale it with me, we can wholesale it together. I got a great buyers list, as I mentioned in this video. Send me an email, greg@velocityhousebuyers.com, or send me a message on Instagram @grego37. Hope you got value from this. I'll see you on the next one, and have a great day. Bye.